China with tariffs to protect Americans from the flow of illegal immigrants and fentanyl in this country. And we can now report Mexico and Canada are leaning into Trump's art of the deal. The president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, spoke to Trump and is saying she will send 10,000 Mexican military to their side of the southern border. That's meant to assist with the border crisis left behind by the Biden-Harris administration. Trump says they agreed to pause any tariffs for 30 days. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. The president also just spoke with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and we'll talk with him again today in a few hours. Senior White House correspondent Peter Ducey. Peter, a lot of movement today.
Just in the last few minutes, Harris, we found out how much it costs to get rid of a 25% tariff for a month. The cost is 10,000 Mexican troops, and President Trump himself just went live confirming this. He's saying, I just spoke with President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico. It was a very friendly conversation wherein she agreed to immediately supply 10,000 Mexican soldiers on the border separating Mexico and the United States. These soldiers will be specifically designated to stop the flow of fentanyl and illegal migrants into our country. We further agreed to immediately pause the anticipated tariff for 1 month, during which we will have negotiations headed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, and high-level representatives from Mexico. I look forward to participating in those negotiations with President Sheinbaum as we attempt to achieve a deal between our two countries. And the president deployed some of his economic advisors to the shows this morning to explain that this wasn't about punishing consumers, it was about something else.
President Trump was absolutely 100% clear that this is not a trade war, this is a drug war. There are perhaps 100,000 people last year that died of fentanyl, and the fentanyl is coming in across the Mexican and Canadian borders. 80, 90, 95% of Mexicans want the drug war to end, and the same is true in Canada.
The only event on President Trump's schedule later today is an event at 3 p.m. celebrating the Stanley Cup win of the Florida Panthers. That's right around the time that we understand he is also supposed to talk to Prime Minister Trudeau. We will see if Trudeau is able to head off the tariffs there for a month, something that we have not heard about yet. Is he also going to talk to China's President Xi, who he is threatening with 10% tariffs as well? Harris?
All right, Peter, thank you so very much. There will be, as Peter's pointing out, if something doesn't get worked out with Canada's Prime Minister Trudeau and President Trump, there will be a 10% tariff on Canadian energy imports and a 25% tariff on all other Canadian imports. And there would have been on all Mexican imports at midnight. As you know, Mexico just moments ago said 30 days, give us 30 days to work this out. I'm paraphrasing, but that's effectively what's happening. There will also be an additional 10% tariff on Chinese imports. And you just heard Peter ask, so are they going to come to the table? Well, we'll see. The day is young, and there's a lot of talking going on. Steve Hilton, Fox News contributor. Steve, people are moving, and I think you have a pretty clear-eyed idea of why.
Because you have someone in the White House who is taking control, he's in charge, he's at the height of his powers, he's commanding the American stage, the world stage. And by the way, this is what we saw before. So the reason people are so completely kind of losing it over the weekend ever since these tariffs is just completely incomprehensible to me. I remember it very clearly last time round, because then the real issue with Mexico wasn't just fentanyl, it was also, of course, immigration and the caravans and all of that. And I remember that President Trump announced 25% tariffs on Mexico via a tweet, as it was then called, on a Sunday night just before we went on air with my show. And we covered it, and within days, you saw exactly the same kind of quick reaction. The then president of Mexico sent troops to their southern border, and it's happened again. And here is someone who's completely ripping up the playbook of how things operate in terms of relationships between countries. I remember, of course, being back in the day I was in 10 Downing Street in the UK, and I saw how it was done, the traditional way. And governments, when there's an issue with another country, and they send their representatives, and you have diplomats, and maybe in 6 months there's some kind of summit, and then they issue working papers, and maybe in 2 years something happens. With President Trump, he's not interested in any of that. That's why people elected him, to get things done quickly and just look at the results with within just practically 24 hours in terms of the fentanyl issue, which, by the way, he understands so deeply because he understands the communities most affected by it.
You know, it's great to get your front row seat to history from David Cameron's leadership in the UK and apply that now. Our brand new American citizen and friend, Steve Hilton, we really appreciate that. Please sit tight with me as I work through this, because you said 24 hours. I feel like it's been 24 minutes because they were still kind of trash talking with, we're coming with our own, we're doing this tariff against the United States. Treasury Secretary, who'll be a big part of this, Scott Bessent, will be in a major position in upcoming trade talks. And he wrote a recent opinion piece about this. He says, the truth is that other countries have taken advantage of the United States' openness for far too long because we allowed them to. Tariffs are a means to finally stand up for Americans. He also said this during his confirmation hearing.
One will be for remedying unfair trade practices. Two, maybe for a more generalized tariff as a revenue raiser for the federal budget. Tariffs can be used for negotiations, whether it's for Mexico on the fentanyl crisis. So, you know, I think you and the American people should think about those three broad categories.